It's Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. In order to save America, we may need to pass the Save America Act, mining Hormuz, and two major corporations hitting the trail. Next on the AM Update. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says, we're not going to have the votes to pass an 80-20 issue on the Save America Act.
Risk of being on the wrong side of President Trump and your resistance to do this talking filibuster, tying the Senate in knots for weeks.
We don't have the votes either to proceed, get on a talking filibuster, nor to sustain one if we got on it. But that is just a function of math. And there isn't anything I can do about that. I mean, I understand the president's got a passion to see this issue addressed, as we all do.
Does he understand that, though?
Well, we've conveyed that to him, but we will continue to make that argument because I think it's important that everybody understand that this really is about the votes. It's about the math. And I'm for better or worse, I'm the one who has to be the clear-eyed realist about what we can achieve here. And so we'll continue to convey that. And I think that we're going to have the fight on the floor. We're going to vote on this. We're going to put it up, and we'll give the Democrats the opportunity to cast their vote on whether or not they think non-citizens ought to vote in American elections.
So failure theater, once again, John Thune, Senate Majority Leader, saying, we're going to bring the Save America Act to the floor, but we're going to bring it with the 60-vote threshold. The way the House passed it out of that chamber is that it doesn't need 60 votes. It needs 51 votes. It's not that complicated, but that's just the rationale that it is. It doesn't actually need 60 votes to actually bring it to the floor, but yet Senate Majority Leader John Thune says they're going to do it that way regardless. Failure theater yet again. Seems to me like we need to maybe pass the Save America Act. That's just utterly ridiculous on its face. And there's John Thune. I need to be the clear-eyed realist. We don't have enough votes, and there's nothing I can do about it. As the Senate Majority Leader, he said that. There's nothing I can do about it. Here's some realism for you. Is there not a position called the Senate Majority Whip? There's nothing you can do about it? Nothing? Have you tried to do anything about it at all? It's ridiculous. Thune also faced some scorn from MAGA, calling and characterizing the pushback to his pushback to the Save America Act as being the responsibility of quote-unquote paid influencers. That's going to sit well. We'll talk about something else that's not going to sit well, probably with the MAGA base coming up next. Here's Caroline Leavitt at the White House making the White House's case and pitch for the Save America Act.
President Trump is urging Congress to pass the Save America Act, one of the most critical pieces of legislation in our nation's history. The Save America Act is overwhelmingly popular with all Americans because each provision is rooted in common sense. The Save America Act has 5 simple requirements as requested by the President of the United States. Number 1, voters have to show ID to cast a ballot in an American election. Very simple. 90% of Americans, including more than 80% of Democrat voters, agree with this. Number 2, the Save America Act will require all voters to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in American elections. Again, this is popular and rooted in common sense. Only American citizens have the right to vote in American elections. But after Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens into our country, it's more important than ever to ensure that only American citizens are registering to vote on our nation's voter rolls, and Congress needs to pass this.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt ticked off the other priorities from President Trump. No men and women's sports, no mail-in ballots, no tranny surgeries, meatball mutilation surgeries for children. Well, updates operationally on the war with Iran. Your Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
For example, today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing yet.
So once again, steely resolve there from the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. The price of oil continued to plummet precipitously yesterday from some of the just mind-boggling increases we'd seen over the weekend. It was up to around $116 a barrel, as we mentioned on Monday. Yesterday, it went below $80 a barrel. That was until CBS News came out with a report that Iran was starting to mine the Strait of Hormuz, placing some of those maritime mines. Of course, that would be a danger, a hazard to any shipping through the strait. It also would be disastrous for Iran, I have to think, as well. In response to that, President Trump posted this on Truth Social, quote, "If Iran has put out any mines in the Hormuz Strait, and we have no reports of them doing so, we want them removed immediately. If for any reason mines were placed and they are not removed forthwith, the military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen before. If, on the other hand, they want to remove what has been placed, it will be a giant step in the right direction." President Trump followed up that message with this: "I'm pleased to report that within the last few hours, we have hit and completely destroyed 10 inactive mine-laying boats and or ships, with more to follow." So what's that all about? You wouldn't think if there was no threat whatsoever that President Trump would have come out with something like, "We don't know if they placed mines, but if they have, they're going to get, slaughtered 10 times, 20 times worse than we already have." That whole flap was weird. Oil prices, as of this recording, kind of stabilized around $86 a barrel. So that would be disastrous for Iran, I have to think. And it proves one of two things, and I don't think there's really anything in between. It shows and proves that Iran is just not capable of rational decision-making, at least not at this juncture, or it proves that they are only capable of rational decision-making under a very nihilistic and apocalyptic Islamic worldview. It's one of those two things, and there's no in-between. Let's talk about this now. One thing that maybe the MAGA base is not going to be happy about: Axios reporting yesterday that White House is telling members of Congress to kind of cut out the talk about mass deportations. James Blair, he's their political guru, deputy chief of staff and the 2024 campaign political director, came out with this on social media, quote, "It's very simple. Republicans want to keep deporting the violent criminal illegals that Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress left in. Democrats want to shield them from deportation, which is why they unanimously support sanctuary cities. Republicans will get the violent criminals out. Democrats will throw the border back open, choose accordingly." That's, again, if that's just midterm messaging, maybe trying to get the normies back in the fold, the independents back in the fold, those smooth-brained individuals who just thought that ICE was so mean. DHS is rotten to the core, as you've heard ad nauseum Democrats say. Okay, that's one thing. If that's a serious policy shift, that's just a complete and total stab in the back. House Speaker Mike Johnson seemed to echo some of these sentiments.
We got a little hiccup with some of the Hispanic and Latino voters, for certain, because some of the immigration enforcement was viewed to be overzealous, and everybody can describe it differently. But here's the good news: we're in a course correction mode right now. We're going to have a new Secretary of Homeland Security. Mark Wayne Mullen is going to do a great job in that role. I'm sure that he'll be confirmed by the Senate. He's a thoughtful guy. He'll bring a thoughtful approach. You have somebody like Tom Homan, who has 40 years experience in the field and was decorated by former Democrat presidents for his acumen and expertise. And he went into Minneapolis and brought calm to the chaos there. That's what you're going to see. And
House Speaker Mike Johnson seeming to echo some of the sentiment that, we admit that, actually letting people see how the sausage gets made when it comes to mass deportations is political liability for us. So we're going to dial things back a little bit. I hope this is not just a complete and total betrayal, because it kind of sounds like a complete and total betrayal. And I hope it's just deception for a positive end. Is that bad? Is that bad? It's James Talarico o'clock. My absolute favorite clip I think I have seen from this Senate Democrat nominee from Texas. He's speaking at a quote-unquote church in this clip. Speaking at a quote-unquote church, a building pretending to be a church. And he goes on to talk about what it will look like when fascism comes to America. Listen to this.
It's been said before that when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the flag and carrying the cross.
What's ironic, and I'm not making this up, you can look up this clip for yourself. James Talarico saying that when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped up in a flag and carrying the cross. He's speaking at this quote-unquote church, and behind him is a cross adorned with the so-called trans flag and the so-called LGBTQIA++ flag. While he claims that fascism will come to America wrapped in a flag carrying the cross. Maybe some positive numbers when it comes to the job market. We'll talk about that next. Also, a couple of major corporations, they're hitting the road. It's coming up next. For the 4 weeks ending February 21st, 2026, ADP is reporting that private employers added an average of 15,500 jobs a week. Employment gains reached their highest since Thanksgiving week of last year, holding steady in February after 5 straight weeks of strengthening. This positive labor market signal stands in the face of last week's surprising and kind of disastrous plunge in non-farm payrolls, driven by a strike-triggered drop in healthcare jobs and huge revisions in the labor force as native workers suddenly disappeared. Combined with the ongoing strength of the jobless claims data, one could argue that the no hire, no fire economy is edging back towards job growth. That report from Zero Hedge citing ADP employment numbers for the 4 weeks ending in February 21st. Maybe some positive. I'm looking for any positive signs when it comes to the labor market. How about this? A couple of major corporations hitting the road. After nearly 50 years in Orange County, Yamaha Motor Corporation USA is packing up its headquarters, trading Cypress, California for Kennesaw, Georgia, in a sweeping corporate shift that will impact about 250 workers. The motorcycle and motorsports giant says the move is part of a major structural reform meant to boost profits as costs climb, including pressure from tariffs imposed during the administration of President Trump. The relocation, of course, won't happen overnight. Yamaha says it'll start the transition late this year, with it being completed in 2028. Also, there's this. ExxonMobil poised to move its legal headquarters from New Jersey to Texas in search of more friendly business environment. The board of directors for the largest U.S.-based oil-producing company, which already runs its operations from the Houston suburb of Spring, unanimously recommended to its shareholders that they vote to re-domicile the company in Texas. Shareholders will vote on that decision May 27th. If successful, it'll move Exxon's legal home for the first time since it registered in New Jersey in 1882 as Standard Oil Company. So, a couple of major corporations on the same day announcing they are leaving blue states, hitting the road. Why could that be? Well, probably stories like this in an indirect way. Abigail Spanberger, the new Virginia governor, she's got new legislation on her desk. Virginians, of course, quickly learning the fruits of electing Democrats who run as moderates but are anything than that. On Monday, Democrats in both chambers of the Virginia legislature passed a sweeping gun control law that will soon land on Governor Spanberger's desk. The bill, HB 217, places a ban on new sales of quote-unquote assault firearms and makes it illegal to possess high-capacity magazines exceeding 15 rounds of ammunition. Virginia law defines an assault firearm as any semi-automatic center-fire rifle or pistol which expels single or multiple projectiles by action of an explosion of a combustible material and is equipped at the time of the offense with a muzzle which will hold more than 20 rounds of ammunition, or designed by the manufacturer to accommodate a silencer, or equipped with a folding stock. So there's some sort of a definition of assault firearm, assault rifle, basically any old gun that holds more than 15 rounds of ammunition is now considered a quote-unquote assault firearm. So they're just going to make the clips smaller for Virginia compliance. Is it illegal to get a coupler? I don't know. But I'm sure you could just get a coupler and there's 20 rounds. Or heck, you could do a 14-round magazine. You could do a 14-round magazine with a coupler, make it 28 rounds. So it's pretty close to 30, which is standard capacity on a lot of the guns that they're trying to ban, it sounds like. And now here's this. Congressman Tim Burchett says the price of gas is a scam. Listen to this.
Hey everybody, Tim Burchett. Just filled up the dually with diesel yesterday. I decided to do that instead of sending my daughter to school next year. But the reality is, I mean, they're ripping us off. Diesel is like the second cut they take off it when it comes out of the ground. I think it goes kerosene and diesel and then gasoline, and diesel is the most expensive. And I'm sure they can make some sort of, they'll bring out the economic experts, another to cover themselves on that. Another thing that really ticks me off about it is that they've when the price of oil, like they say, well, it's this whatever happens overseas is causing this to happen. But then when you go to the hardware store or the auto parts store and you buy a quart of oil, guess what? The price hasn't gone up. But the price of the gasoline in the tank is going up, and that's gasoline that is probably months from it was in the ground, and then it was converted into gasoline at a refinery. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. It's greed, and eventually we're going to come to a point in technology, say coal turning coal into oil and gasoline, as the Germans did during the Second World War. But guess what? The technology hasn't advanced since then. It's still cheaper just to get oil out of the ground than to convert coal, which we have a lot of. And how much oil does America get from Iran? Zero. That's how much. This is a scam, and these oil companies, shame on them. They're using this opportunity to make record profits once again. So, you got to ask yourself, even if we were getting it, what about the stuff that's already in the pipeline, that's already been paid for, or the gasoline that's in the tank at your neighborhood filling station? How does it go up exponentially when something happens overseas? It's a scam. Gasoline goes up like a rocket, and it comes down with a parachute, and it never gets back down to where it should be. Technology, all that technology in the world, we're going to eventually figure out how to crack that hydrogen molecule and run our cars off of water, I think. I don't care what the scientists tell you right now. They tell you all this stuff. It's, well, the man couldn't run a 4-minute mile, can't go 100 miles an hour in an automobile, you can't breathe. We're not going to go to the moon. Tim Burchett's not going to get elected to Congress. You hear all those things, but guess what? They happened. Anyway, thank y'all for sending me here.
Tim Burchett, congressman, saying that the price of gas is a scam. And I'd never really thought of that before, but it's true. If you go to Napa or O'Reilly's, it never seems to, the motor oil never seems to go up as exponentially or at all when you have these supply shocks, or at least forecasted supply shocks that send the neighborhood gas stations prices through the roof. Now, I'm not sure if I agree with all of his analysis. What I will say, though, for air analysis, is that it is largely a scam one way or another. If we had a truly an open market when it came to the production of petroleum-related products, if we truly had a real market there, then I think the price of gas in the year 2026 could still be under $2. It really could be. If there are no subsidies for EVs, if there are no subsidies, I'm not sure if we still have subsidies for oil production. I know that was a big topic du jour at one point. I'm sure there are some subsidies somewhere. If we got rid of all of the subsidies and really incentivized the production and the volume of sale of gallons of gasoline, and that means that we have to re-embrace internal combustion engines, then gas and other related things would be truly cheap again, like actually cheap. I barely remember when gas prices were around $1. I barely remember it. It seems just bizarre to me that that was reality. Other than, of course, the COVID year. I'm talking about way back in the late 90s. But if we truly had a real market where we were not disincentivizing certain behaviors and re-incentivizing other behaviors by getting government out of all phases of that chain, gas prices would be, regardless of what goes on the other side of the planet, gas prices would be pretty cheap and pretty stable, I have to think. That's going to do it for a Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.